In studio is Yankees reporter, and he's long time been here at the Fan. You see him on MLB Network as well. He's terrific. Really just a genuinely good guy, too. Sweeney Murti. What up, Sween?
Fellas, how we doing today? It's nice to see you in person.
Yeah,
dude.
Let's do the thing.
All right, do the thing.
We got to ask you
Do
about
the
this
thing, Sweeney.
Jeter thing before we get to the lockout, only because it's local and it's Derek Jeter.
Yeah.
Derek Jeter steps down 25 minutes ago. Rob Manfred hasn't been heard from in like a week. And 15 minutes later, he's issuing a statement. And, in this statement, he talks about, he's a highly respected voice for the diversity and competition committees. The last sentence, Derek is a pillar of our game, and we look forward to his future contributions to baseball. Is he going to work for the league?
I wouldn't think so. I don't think he's, and it's funny, you talked about like how quickly he wrote this. Like, I don't think, Rob Manfred woke up this morning and was sprung with the news that Derek Jeter was going to step down. I think this had obviously has been in the works for a little while.
I gotcha.
You'd think. I mentioned this to Hoff when I came in, and this was just coming out just as I walked in. I can't remember who it was. This is how people know that I'm good at protecting sources. I can't remember who told me stuff. I can't remember who it was, but somebody told me recently, within the last couple of months, that they could see the day when Jeter was going to step down, like maybe, and the time frame, I don't know, like within the next couple of years, they could see it, but maybe with the idea that, he had turned the corner with the Marlins and then steps away. Not that they didn't see this as like a long-term situation for him. But I'm just remembering that conversation this morning as this news broke. I'm surprised that the timing of it now that it happened this fast.
Okay.
But we were telling Tiki, yes, think about what he's doing. The one line in his statement that jumps out at me, he said, the vision for the future of the franchise is different than the one I signed up to lead, right? Well, since he signed on, Steve Cohen has bought the Mets and is, blowing away payroll figures like everybody. The Nationals have won a World Series. The Braves have won a World Series. The Phillies are spending money. They signed Bryce Harper. Yeah. So he's sitting there saying, okay, well, what am I doing? Where are we going? I guarantee you all of that is kind of in the mix here. And he says, okay, maybe this isn't going to happen the way that I wanted to, and it's time to go.
All right.
That makes sense, actually.
How many games we get in this season?
Boy, I hope, we're not at the point yet where if nothing happens today, where it's going to be less than 162. But we're at the point where...
Wait, so you think if nothing happens today, we're definitely getting less than 162?
No, I don't think that's definitely...
Okay, because
no.
I say the same thing. So
Yeah.
I think that's a floating, fluid,
absolutely
symbolic benchmark because, you need the 3 days to ratify, but you could always, squeeze off 4 or 5 days of spring training
you
if you
can
had to.
Negotiate the number of games once you... Put it this way. Whenever they get a deal, they have to negotiate the number of games.
Mm-hmm.
So you're going to start at the highest possible number, and if that deal happens 10 days from now, they'll figure out a way to get 162 games in. You just got to negotiate it, where you're going to get it from. Maybe fewer off days in the schedule because that's a big part of the schedule. Is the players they expanded the calendar a couple of years ago to get players more off days. That was part of the last CBA thing.
Yeah.
So
which I think worked out pretty well for the sport too.
I think
I like it.
Well, they needed it because listen, it all comes back to in post PED era. You need to build in more recovery time for players.
Yeah, you don't want guys taking HGH. You gotta
right.
You gotta let them recover.
Exactly.
All
the rest time, all this travel stuff. This is all related to post PEDs. You're finding different ways to navigate that, and that's a big part of it. The rest days are a big part of it.
Do you think that this? You said if it takes 10 days, they can still find a way to get 162 games. Do you think it's going to take another week and a half?
Honestly, Tiki, I don't think anybody knows. I haven't talked to anybody who believes that they're optimistic that something happens today or soon. And anybody who says that, it tells me that they're hearing that, it's usually something driven from the owner's side to put pressure on the players.
I see.
And push the deal forward. Because the players are dug in. They're dug in on luxury tax. They're dug in on spending and making sure that there is a bigger piece of that pie for them because clearly there's a lot of money in the game.
Yep.
And I heard people talking earlier about there was the earlier possibility of a spending floor. Like the floor is a little tricky to navigate because I don't think a team like the Pirates necessarily gets anywhere by spending another $30 million more, except
I agree.
investing in a player that they don't necessarily want.
Yep.
Yeah.
But there's a difference between raising how much they spend and incentivizing somebody to try to win. Like obviously teams are not. The Pirates is an example. They figured out an extra $50 million in payroll isn't getting us anywhere, so why should we spend it at all? Well, that's a terrible way for the sport to run.
Yeah.
So they've got to figure out how to get that. How do we get these guys to try to win? Because all they're doing right now is trying to get in a draft position and figure out how to win a lottery that gets them this 3-4 year window, which the Pirates, by the way, had a decade ago. I don't believe that every team is entitled to be a contender. You got 30 teams, okay?
Yeah.
Somebody's going to finish first, somebody's going to finish last. And it's fine that if you have a group of teams that is always among the finalists, and then you rotate in based on cycles. You get the Orioles good for 3 or 4 years, and the Pirates are good for 3 or 4 years.
Rangers fluctuate. We've seen
There's
it.
nothing
Seattle
wrong with that. I don't know why that's a bad model.
Yeah, it's natural attrition of the sport. I mean, nobody has a contract that says you are guaranteed to compete forever. We're talking to Sweeney Murti, Yankee reporter, with us here in studio. Sweeney, I was talking before, and I dropped some numbers on Teak about just to illuminate that there have been some pockets of apathy in this city with both Mets and Yankees fans. And granted, it was a while ago, but it's backed up in the respect. In the 70s, the Mets had back-to-back years where they averaged 9,600 fans per game, as you know, and back in 78, 79. The Yankees, even after this includes 2 World Series appearances, both losses, but from 63 to 75, they had 10 years of that window where they averaged 16,000 or less, 2 of which were at Shea, to be fair. But still, there's this belief that, it's the city game to an extent. The 50s, the 3 teams, Willie, Mickey, and the Duke, we're forever tied to baseball. The numbers actually contradict that. How tolerant do you think that Yankee and Met fans will be for a protracted lockout where they really might not come back? I know people threaten that.
Yeah.
But do you think that that's plausible this time around or no?
I think, it doesn't even have to be protracted. Let's say you miss a month of the season. Let's just say, for argument's sake, you're starting in May. Mm-hmm. Okay. Weather's nice. How many, are you going to get 30,000 for a Yankee weekend game when you used to maybe get 40? Are you going to get 25? And here's the other thing. What are they going to show up to do? They're going to show up and boo the players, even though, the owners are the ones putting, they can't show up to board meetings and boo owners, but they're going to show up.
Well, the way you boo the owners is by not going at all. That's how you boo the owner.
Which is how that'll happen, too. But the ones who show up are going to, it's a good point. And given, you got to take current economic factors into consideration, too, and where the fan base is and what the general population is and where they want to spend their money and how they're going to spend their money. It'll start low. There'll be some blowback, and we're going to be talking about we're going to be looking at the attendance figures of every game and judging them on an everyday basis, which that isn't necessarily fair. It's going to take some time, but remember, the Yankees, if I remember correctly, they still 94, 95 is the work stoppage. You didn't get your first full season again until 96. I think they drew 2 million plus in 98. And 3 million starting in 99, and then because of what the 98 team did, and then they just drew 3 million from then till the end of time. It seems.
One of the things that you look at now is the free agency in Major League Baseball is just, it feels massive. There's so many players that still need to get signed.
Yeah. And hundreds of them.
And it's going to be fast. It's going to be awesome, right? BT was just talking about this in one of the breaks. It's we're going to be all over this, especially from a Yankees and a Mets perspective. Where do you think either or both of these teams, particularly Yankees, are going once free agency is able to happen? We know that back under the table talks are kind of happening. Hey, what would it take to get this guy?
It trades too, Teak.
Trades exactly.
Olsen,
so what happens when this thing finally, gets ticked on?
This is going to be kind of a cop-out answer, but you're going to understand it. It really depends on what the tax threshold is going to be. That's why the Yankees didn't do anything before the lockout.
That makes sense now. You're right.
The Dodgers spent money on paper, but it was just to re-sign Chris Taylor. So they didn't really restock. They're trying to do some stuff. The Red Sox didn't really spend a lot of money. These teams are all waiting to see what the tax thresholds are going to be. So until you see that, and listen, Yankee spending has been right in line with those tax thresholds for the last several years. Yeah. We know that. And unless the penalties are drastically reduced, you're going to see a lot of the same. So they're going to have to, they have to address shortstop. They have to address first base. They need outfield help. They don't have a lot of outfield depth right now. Pitching is not their problem, but you're always going to address it. Probably look for another reliever. Probably look for, maybe you can find another starter, but they're like 8 or 9 deep right now, starting. You might want more. You always want more.
Sure.
They've got to do all of those things, but they're all tied into what that tax threshold is going to be. Because, as you and I talked about the last time we were on, it's more about the punitive nature of going over it and what happens. The Yankees and Red Sox are both in a division with Tampa Bay, who spends money very well, and they get help from other teams.
Yeah.
And if you go over the tax threshold, you're helping that team beat you, which is why they don't. We think of how many. I guess you didn't do it here last year, but you know how many people were calling in every time the Yankees lost a game to the Orioles? BT, I know you're feeling it, right?
Oh,
Every
yeah?
time
I was mystified. How we losing to these scrubs?
Now imagine the math adds up. If you've gone over the tax threshold,
Yep.
you're actually paying Baltimore.
Yeah, for sure.
And
usually they reinvest that in the lower levels of the minors for player development. You might not see it on the field, but you are still strengthening the organization.
You know why? Because the system worked. They're not spending tens of millions of dollars more. They're only spending a fraction. If these teams had gone over, if you had 5 teams go $20 million over the tax threshold, the pot of money is a lot larger. And now you're talking about a $2 million relief pitcher that Tampa Bay gets.
That's right.
Or that Baltimore gets, and it's coming to beat you. But that's not happening because they're staying under the threshold. They're not going over it. It's acting as a cap. People are saying it's not a cap, but they're treating it like one. If you treat it like a cap, it is a cap.
The right word's deterrent. It's not a cap, but it's an absolute deterrent for
Completely.
sure. So Sweeney Murti's with us in studio, outstanding Yankee reporter for years here on The Fan. Sween, I don't really know how you quantify this, but you certainly will have a good opinion on this. George Steinbrenner, if he lost the Mayor's Trophy game, he would be pissed off. We all know the stories there. And he was consumed with, being the team in town, and more times than not, the Yankees were. Hal's different. I'm not saying he doesn't care about that, but he certainly doesn't project that energy where it matters to him nearly as much as his dad. And quite frankly, it's a little disconcerting as a Yankee fan because I don't know how much Hal really even wants to own the team. That's just my opinion. It doesn't seem like he's really immersed in the job. People can take issue with that statement. That's just what I get as a Yankee fan. How consumed do you think he is with what is going on in Queens? The optics, the money, the possible grip on the city. You know as well as I, the Mets owned the city in the 80s. In the mid-80s, this was a Mets town. Does Hal even care about that?
I mean, I'll argue with you that there were plenty of other decades when the Yankees owned the city, right?
Oh, no question.
You're talking about
Almost
just that
every
one
other
era
decade.
that we grew up
sure.
in.
Yeah.
I think it's important to remember that the system that is in place now and has been for the last 15, 20 years is one that George Steinbrenner really never operated under. The CBA, the financial landscape, all the parameters that we just got done talking about didn't exist for George Steinbrenner. So it's hard to tell how he would react if those things were in place and you're saying, boss, you can spend all this money, but guess what? Now we're going to be $40 million over the tax. They're going to take away our draft picks, or take away international, and some of this money is going to go back to Tampa Bay, and they're already beating us. Do you want to help them even more? And when we want to trade for somebody next year, we're not going to have enough people in the farm system because we've lost international money. We've lost draft spots.
Yeah.
We can't go get Joey Gallo because Texas likes somebody else's prospects better than like ours. So even though there's this argument about the Yankees not developing players, they have enough players to trade for Joey Gallo and Anthony Rizzo at the trade deadline. There's still value in those guys.
Yeah.
I think Hal gets viewed in comparison to his father when they're not playing in the same lanes. And I'll tell you one other story. Last year, the only time that Hal made himself available to us to speak last year was around midseason. There were questions about Brian Cashman's future, about Aaron Boone's future, and he came to address that. One of the things I got to ask him on this call was in relation to kind of something you're talking about. And I talked about, I don't remember the exact wording of the question, but it was something about the idea of how fans want action of some kind like his father used to do. Okay, but Hal doesn't believe in firing coaches midseason or managers midseason. Hasn't happened in decades around here, right? So I asked him something about how he reacts and responds when fans want him to be a little bit like his father. And his answer was like this. I wish I had, it was a Zoom. I wish I had a chance to sit down with him for an hour and follow up because it's psychoanalysis like crazy on this. He talked about how the stuff his father didn't always work. And he got lambasted for it publicly. Like we'll say, because George would fire managers. Why? All you did was kill him when he did fire a manager and his team, and it didn't work.
There was a point where I didn't like George for a long chunk.
All those things that you want him to do, go back and look. They didn't work, but you want them now because it makes it feel like there's something that cares. Somebody cares. You want some. Listen, I'll use another example, okay? Derek Jeter didn't break water coolers like Paul O'Neill, but he wanted to win just as badly as Paul O'Neill. He didn't take losing more lightly because he didn't break a water cooler. Hal's not acting like George. I can't tell you.
I don't need him to change his personality.
Yeah.
He's never going to be the presence that his dad was. He's
but it affected him. That's my thing. Like how his dad was treated affected him growing up.
I don't doubt that. But I think that the criticism from Yankee fans, rightly or wrongly, and for me it's more right than wrong, is that what he emits publicly when things are not the Yankee standard does not satisfy our emotional intolerance to not being the Yankees. I don't know how else to explain. It doesn't match.
I talked to somebody today who has had a long-standing relationship with the Steinbrenners, and he said something interesting to me today regarding just this whole the labor situation. And I said, they both kind of equate. And I said, I started a sentence by saying, but fans need to understand. He stops me. He says, fans don't need to understand anything. They're fans. They're just going to be emotional. They don't care about luxury tax thresholds and this and that. But, that's where the business side is. And that's what these guys do. But, fans don't need to care. So it doesn't, I can explain to you all the different psychoanalysis I'm doing of Hal Steinbrenner's personality, but it doesn't matter. Just go win a World Series. Go sign this player. I don't care how much extra it costs. Go get that guy. That's what your dad would have done. It's just this whole built-in thing, and we don't care about all the reasons behind it. We just want to see it happen because it's our entertainment. We want to be entertained, and we want this team to be good, and that's all part of what we're watching. It's a much different landscape. They are now, and listen, frankly, I know we're almost out here, but it's part of the discussion. Like the rules change every time one team threatens. The original luxury tax situation only came in when the Yankees won 3 out of 4 World Series in a row, and we're about to sign Jason Giambi and everybody else. They just signed Mike Messina away from the Orioles. They're going to sign Jason Giambi from the A's. People are scared. We got to do something to stop the Yankees from spending. Steve Cohen is putting that same fear of God into everybody right now. Small market owners are saying, we're already afraid of the Yankees and the Red Sox and the Dodgers. Now we got to contend with this guy too. Let's do something. We got to reel it back in. That's why we are where we are. Right now.
I would suggest to Hal. Yes, in real time, it probably felt like his dad was getting crushed, but history is judging George Steinbrenner very well. Right, when it's all said and done,
to a degree, but he lived it. We didn't.
I understand that, but I'm just saying
your father is getting skewered.
True.
He was a teenager. He's BT. He's our age.
I get it.
But history is judging George Steinbrenner well, I would say, because of the championships, it's a success. Right. You got to take your shot at some point. I know we're way late here, but BT said something earlier in the show when we were talking about this, how the minor leaguers, the Volpes and the Peraza, those guys, they're missing an opportunity right now. Because the Yankees are saying, you know what, we got to spend XYZ amount of money to go get a shortstop in free agency. How much is this affecting farm systems and from some of these farm kids that probably might have gotten a shot? You know what I mean? Because of this lockout.
I think Volpe's unaffected because he's not on the 40-man. He's down working in Tampa. He's going to have a full minor league camp, a full minor league season.
But I'm not even talking about that. I'm talking about a chance to actually make the team.
I don't think he had a chance.
Already,
he'll be in Double-A, right?
He's going to likely start in Double-A over in Somerset. I watched him a couple of times last year up in Hudson Valley, and he's fun to watch. You're going to like just watching him. Peraza is the one that's in a different category because he could be the guy. Like if you brought in, lesser shortstops, Peraza has a chance to compete against them. If you happen to sign a Carlos Correa, Peraza has no chance to compete against that guy.
I hear you.
But if you brought in somebody else and Peraza wows you, all of a sudden you're cutting bait with that guy at some point. So he's the one that's probably missing right now because he would be in big league camp.
All right, we got to roll. Yes or no, will they deliver a big, big name once this lockout's over, whether it's with a trade or whether it's signing one of the remaining big free agents?
First baseman. There's going to be a first baseman. It's not, it's not Luke Voigt. It's going to be Olsen or Freeman or somebody. But,
Okay.
I mean, they need, maybe it's Rizzo, but it wouldn't feel like a big name, but they need a first baseman.
I think Rizzo's lost a little bit off that bat speed
I think
myself.
so, too. Yeah, he's been trending down for a couple of years.
Sweeney, good seeing you in studio, bud.
You two fellas, we'll
The
talk.
Mert
This is
Man.
what
Thank
we
you,
do.
Sweeney.
When there's a game, this is what we get to do, right?
I can't
So
wait,
we'll do it
man.
again.
I'm going to have you on the show a lot. You know that. Sweeney Murti, Yankee beat man, for sure, Yankee reporter.